So Newark Tech Week, we call ourselves the refounders of Newark Tech Week, as it had been in hiatus. What it is a celebration of Black, brown startup innovation in the city of Newark. It's all inclusive of everyone. What it is a wealth of events, discussions, launches, startup conversations, fireside chats across the entire city, including all of our key anchors and a lot of what community-based organizations that help to support and foster the startup ecosystem here in Newark, the largest city in New Jersey. Very proud to do that work. I think it is important to have visibility and to also uniquely say where we differentiate ourselves on the national stage. Not having access to capital were huge hindrances in us finding our footing in my first company, which is a strategies agency. And then even the narrative that is embedded in how Equal Space came to be reality today, 7 years later. That was frustrating for me on a personal side. We had the credentials, I had the network, I had a lot of the alignment, I had the accolades. I come from academia. I'm a proud professor at Rutgers University. I've been a professor in New York, and yet still the doubt, trepidation, and doors were closed off to a lot of the ideas and a lot of the traction I needed to get my business off the ground. That's the personal side. On the professional side, my agency specializes in social impact driven campaign work and inclusive work. So I'm very, very happy to call United Way of Greater Newark my client, Mayor Rajay Baraka is a client, the Rockefeller Foundation is a client, and so what I do on the professional side is really from the ground up find community leaders and organizations that do the work and find them the funding that they need to expand on the work. So my particular thought work and strategy around that really came full bloom even during the pandemic when a lot of state institutions were like, we have this funding, we have state funding, we have federal funding, we need to help our small businesses and our startup community, but had absolutely no wherewithal and where to start. And that's kind of where my championing for diversity came from the top side. And then Equal Space was born from legit 7 years ago. Newark was a very different landscape. My agency was already here. We already occupied a huge floor. We were doing work for then Mayor Cory Booker, now Senator Booker, and we just kept giving space to startups. There was nowhere for them to congregate, nowhere for them to do an empowered pitch like here at Venture, like shout out to Will, to do their pitches with the authority and the respect that they should have. And so my co-founder and I, Raphael, who's in the crowd, love you to death, we just gave space, and the next thing we knew, more than half of our space was filled with startups, and I decided that this was a solution that needed to happen in the city, even when a lot of anchors did not believe in it. So Equal Space still remains today a completely grassroots, self-funded organization independently, and we love doing this work. So I wouldn't say I'm a subject matter expert, I would say I'm a digital advocate. I'm saying I'm unflinching and unbending in the way that I want to support Black and brown voices. That was great. I'm back. I'm sorry. It's only day 2 of Tech Week, and I'm on like a caffeine high.
I'm just normally like this. I think there's a lot of strength in New Jersey, but I'm curious from your perspective, how are we doing in this category in this world? Like, does New Jersey support Equal Space? Do you feel like New Jersey's a place that supports Black and brown founders? Do you think we got a lot of room to grow here?
I think growth is essential. Can I say that the story of my co-founder and I have been one of resource allocation? No, incorrect. At every juncture, whether it was the venture capital route or the non-traditional foundation route, the trepidation on Newark was like, at first it was like, we don't need a co-working space. And we're not a co-working space, we're a shared space, which is a very different model.
What's the difference between a shared space and co-working?
Co-working is transactional. Co-working is WeWork. That is, you get a desk, you get a chair, you get a monthly subscription, you pay it out, and you get a good keg here and there. That's wonderful. But for the unique work that we do, share spacing is you become a part of a community. And I think what's brilliant about our particular unique selling advantage is what we do is get behind your startup. We found out what you're about, and then not all gold is coin, right? So we have a network, we have supportive coaches, we have mentoring, we take no equity. The real win is that you become a part of the community and you grow. So our startups might start at a desk, and then they take on a suite, and then they take on a larger suite. So share spacing is community work, and it's about understanding that there are knowledge gaps as much as there's a wealth gap for the startup, and believing that they can do it.
Is there something that you do that you require of your members to make sure that they are part of the community? Because WeWork would say they were a community, and they would say they were a tech company, but really they were a landlord. and I'm not saying you aren't a community, but that term is thrown around quite a bit, and I'm sort of curious, like, how do you often, obviously we do a lot of community work, we've seen some of the great work you've done, but how do you make that embedded in the culture of the space?
So I believe it's in nonverbal and verbal cues. So you got to be about it. That's the thing about this real world is like the proof is in the sauce. Like my everyday is like you're not going to see me. My founders see me. My startups see me. So and I humbly submit that my network is the shit. So like I will do everything I can to make them successful. And so seeing the founder and seeing me be more than a face and more than walk in, walk out is I think essential to it. The other part about it is, again, talking about the growth in New Jersey, is it's about, again, getting them into the room. Like our startups, like we have some that are playing in the cannabis world, Black women starting the cannabis world, shout out to Brown Box. And really it was just about allocating a couple of just moments. It takes a moment to just see your greatness. And at Equal Space, we have that track record, and we were the first in the game. So like my struggles and my tribulations and the mistakes that me and Ralphie made coming through, we are real transparent about, and we tell that every day. So it's really that. It's like community is not, it's not, oh, we do this, we do these events. Yes, 90% of my events are free. I have a lot of work I do in sponsorship. It's about the everyday wins, because to be Black and brown, to be queer, you get invalidated so much more than you get validated. So like in this world of no, I have 20,000 square feet where we say yes.
I'll just talk about my own point of view, right? I'm a white guy who's very supportive of your causes.
You're a cis hetero white male? Aaron, I didn't know. What you were doing?
What are white people getting wrong? And in particular, I'm talking about the people, forget like racist white people. What about white people who want to do good here, but don't know what to do?
So it's a two-pronged solution. One is creating space is wonderful. Giving me the mic and stepping away is a completely different world. Because if the broad work here is like you really want to do inclusion, and I think there are many allies and I like co-conspirators like you who want to do the work, then the solution really won't come from that community. It will come from me. It will come from, bet on a Black woman, bet on a woman in general, and let them do the work. And it's less than giving them the visibility and more like empowering them. I've seen some phenomenal leaders in this world who get carte blanche, do some dope things, like Aisha Glover, who is an amazing voice through many iterations here in Newark on the mayor's team and now through Audible, who is doing innovative things through this new center. And so she claims and took up space in a way that now is creating really sizable impact. So for me, it's like, find the right people, they exist, and then arm them and empower them to create the solution and support it. Because to question it is almost to like, think that they haven't done their due diligence or their experience is invalid into creating that solution. So I think that's the one way. And then the second way is fund them. Like Equal Space has been doing work for 7. My KPIs, my ROIs, everything's metrics. Shout out to my team who is very diligent in making sure our physical and digital footprint is the shit. Because quite honestly, that's what it is. I walk into a room and I'm like, here you go. And it's no longer me trying to prove and validate my voice. It's like, you gonna jump on this train or not, but it's been going for 7 years. Welcome to the party.
Yeah.
But this is the amount I need to make that happen. And so there are amazing supporters like NJEDA, like Invest Newark, who are completely obsessed with doing like Choose New Jersey too, who will put in fiscal dollars and then also ally with me in ways that we're building things out. Like Apprenti, we partnered with Apprenti to create a real conversation about job acquisition. That's another way that I think white cis hetero males who are at the top of the pyramid could help. Is like, it really is just put us in the room and train. That's what tech is about, right? They could care about what Ivy League unless I'm a startup person, right? But if the work is in development, programming, software engineering, those are really amazing, easy tracks to train someone up in your culture and get them to do it. So I think job acquisition here, we talk about the average income in Newark is $26,000. The average developer job in the tri-state area is $60,000. That is doubling the income of what a Newarker could do. Do you know what that does to the family dynamic? Do you know what that does to Black women who statistically inherit family debt, whether it's single or in a couple situation or in divorce? What that could do to the family dynamic that she can then spread to her community? That's the stuff that I think it is, that really would make, for me, the meter move much faster in my city.
How did you become a Newark champion? Because I know you're born in Brooklyn, went to FDU, now obviously a very strong leader in the Newark community. Like, how did you become one of those inside voices instead of one of the outside voices?
just got my credentials. Newarkers make you work for it. Shout out to the, born and raised Newarkers up in the crowd. Like, that's what I'm saying. Shout it out. Y'all really make you work for it. So I've been in Newark over 13 years. What brought me here was my strategy work. So I was one of the digital strategists for then Cory Booker. I tell everybody, born in Brooklyn, made in Newark, because the story that I had was I had come to the city when I was going to FDU, and I fell in love with it because Brooklyn, from what it was in the roots, was brilliantly, beautifully multicultural, and that's the landscape I grew up in. And I found and saw that in Newark, from the Ironbound to the South Ward. Like, something about the city spoke to me even then. When I came back, I took a 2-hour tour, and I think I moved 20 days later. And I moved my company, and I moved my life here, and I haven't left. And it's been, you have to prove it. That's why we were like, what makes you, a leader in diversity, whatever. Like, the beginning of my career here was literally every day walking to every business, keeping my dollars 100% local, hiring 100% local, looking at, how I'm bringing and contributing to the fabric, as opposed to trying to add something that might not be a hit or a pop for the citizens here. And so through that work, I've done a lot of initiatives in Newark, especially through COVID. Before COVID, I've worked with the CDC. I've created the LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Y'all can check that on my bio. But like, the real thing is everything that I moved through, and when dollars came to me, I made sure that they came to Newark. So we were recipients of LIST grant. We made sure artists were included. We were a recipient of the Catalyst grant. Shout out to Fayemi Shakur, the artistic director at City Hall. We made sure that we sub-granted creatives in our city that could contribute back. So it's really about replicating and creating waves of change, whether it's small or whether it's large.
How do you think about empowering younger generations in taking on that leadership role of inspiring their community to get more involved?
Allow them a more horizontal experience, as opposed to you gotta learn. Sometimes they have so much to contribute that it adds value to what I'm doing, because that perspective is what we need. So for me, at Equal Space particularly, every level of person is like at that table. I present the idea, I present what I think are solutions, and then some are great, some are drops, some are like, and then there'll be some brilliance out of those nuggets with those conversations that I didn't see or insight. So you have to, again, practice what you preach, let them into the room. And also, I tell everyone, if you're looking at it, who's your board of advisors? Who's your board? What does it look like? And if that ain't operating in the way the world looks, if there are not enough women at that table, if it's not diverse, if there are multiple languages at it, you have homework to do. In which case, my advisement is through Medina Equal City, and you can contract me.
I've been part of organizations and boards struggle, and I've got my own, sphere, and it's not the most diverse in the world, but we've wanted to reach out, to different communities. What's a good way, where do you, besides hiring you, what are other ways people, because I know there are people who ask me, like, hey, we're looking for more women, we're looking for more black people on our board, they don't know where to turn. And we're sometimes a good resource, but not always. So how do you feel like people should solve that problem?
So I always find that to be unique, because I'm like, everybody, like, speaking from the vantage point of a Newark person, right? Everybody knows Newark is a black city. It's the biggest city in the state. So for LGBT startups, the accessibility points are so much more different than, a black woman founder. And so I have to uniquely look at those, and sometimes it's a lot of listening and less me thinking, and I take a lot of notes, and then from there I go to the drawing table on how I can uniquely solve their issue. If you're talking in the LGBT, I think my trans brothers and sisters and those living in the spectrum struggle to occupy any space. So coaching on pitching, allowing the oddity and novelty of their experience not to be the reason they're in the room, and for their genuine idea to be looked at, and to treat them, they, with the respect, and also to beat on their idea. If the idea it has loopholes or what have you, and it has like pitfalls, being able to do that and know that they can take that. I think that's the unique part there. Is like there's social component to allowing them to carve out space that has everything to do with never ever having been lighted on. I think black and brown communities, the disparities have shown themselves through the work of like Digital Undivided, which is headquartered here in Newark, where it's like, how do black women bring $52 billion in profit and receive less than 0.2% of investment from venture capital? What could be the problem? And then people are like, oh, clearly it's like subconscious bias, which is just bias. there's nothing subconscious about it. You never let them in the room or you undermine their value just by existing, whether they have a doctorate or not. And I've seen some unique issues there, but I think that you have to do the listening and understanding it. So I like sit there and I listen to them, but the problems are vastly different. Some are funding, some are visibility.
The work that you've been doing is incredible. I'm glad that we're able to be supportive and whatever we can do. Additionally, we want to do it. Hopefully this is the first of more of these that we're doing together. Any questions for Medina before we wrap it up? You know, I like to let the audience kind of hang out for a minute with that awkward silence while we wait for a question to come in. Here we go. What do we got?
Where'd you get that back, dude?
Amazon, boo. Amazon. This one's an Amazon one.
It's a good habit.
Thank you for giving the stage because I hope that it makes everyone here when your startup gets that money, I hope you diversify who you bring in your team. I hope you look left and right. I hope you have taken some of these things to move on because that's how change happens. It's not just, do we got $1 million to spend? It's like, you get that, if you get that Series A, right? Why not bring in some diverse voices to the thing? I guarantee you, it's been proven that we contribute more to the bottom line of companies than anyone else. So I love you, thank you for that, really honest.
So we have a few closing slides. We don't need them. I really appreciate y'all being here. It's all right. I don't know if Phil, but he's going to hang out for a little bit. It's been a very busy year. This was only, I think, our second bigger in-person event, and it's great to be with you all here tonight. We're going to hang out for a little bit. I again want to remind you to appreciate you're following our mask rules. Hopefully everybody's safe. While I'm sitting here, I've got like 3 people who said, hey, I couldn't make it because I was exposed. So, you know, we're trying to take this shit seriously so we can move on. But beyond that, again, a big round of applause for all of you for coming out tonight and to the team. We'll see you with some games and hang out over here for a little bit. Thanks a lot for coming.